What is going on, guys? Welcome back. Commentary for you. As always, I want to thank my sponsor, Steel Supplements. There's a link and discount code down in the description. But today, it is an honor, it is a privilege to be joined by one of the most transcendent athletes of my generation, a guy whose story, literally the highest of highs, the lowest of lows. Today, I have with me the second pick in the 1998 NFL Draft, Ryan Leaf. I want to start by saying, Ryan, anyone watching my channel knows your story. But what amazed me is I learned something about you that I never knew. And I think it speaks to where your career and your talent trajectory was going. You actually motion capped quarterback movements for a video game, didn't you?
I did. I was one of the original, I think, Madden football games. They had us it was in Carlsbad, I think, California at the time. They had us come in and motion capture. And I think I was the motion capture for the quarterback position for a couple years because I don't think they came back and did it every single year. It was trying to think of who else was there. Jason Sehorn, Hardy Nickerson, and I can't remember who the fourth guy was. It might have been Tony Gonzalez, but I can't remember. But yeah, that was pretty cool. They stick you in spandex, put those little motion capture balls on all your joints, and you go about all the quarterback mannerisms.
How did that come about? I mean, did they reach out to you? Did you have a talent agent that reached out to them? Do you recall how everything kind of came into motion with that?
No idea. My agent just said, "Hey, do you want to go do this? They'll give you a free PlayStation." I'm like, "Okay." I had no idea what it meant. I'd never played, Madden before, and I didn't really play it after that. So I didn't. I just went in and was motion capture doing it. I don't even know if I got paid for it. I can't remember. I just knew I was a 21-year-old kid, and this was a pretty cool thing to be asked to do.
Right. Yeah. I mean, so did they have you go through a variety of different quarterback throwing motions? Like, were they really as detailed as, replicate, kind of a sidearm throw, an overhand throw, or was it just go in and do what you were going to do?
It was, they really had me go in and do me. So like, every quarterback that was playing over the next few years, Steve Young throwing lefty was really Ryan Leaf's mannerisms throwing righty. I just went and did my thing, from under center, mimicking, calling the cadence, dropping back, throwing the ball, running, celebrating in the end zone, things like that. It didn't take especially that long to do, and it was fun to be a part of.
Now, in all sincerity, how many times have you spoke about that since it happened?
Every once in a while, it will get brought up, especially when somebody's got some kind of gaming background, especially when they play a ton of Madden. Because the next question is, because I would get a new PlayStation every year with all the new game, like a bunch of new games, and I was never somebody who sat in front of a console and played. I played PGA, I played Tiger Woods golf a ton. I like that. But that's the only game that I really would. And then I got into hockey a little bit right before the draft. But yeah, it wasn't something that really made a lot of conversation with people when it came up.
So I guess to keep that gaming theme in line for just a moment, let's say if we could go back and we gave you, kind of a modest career, like maybe like a Mark Bulger style, you start 99% of your games, maybe 20,000 yards, 130 touchdowns, 85 interceptions. Yeah, maybe Pro Bowl or two, maybe a wild card game. Do you feel like if that was the case, that your story today would mean what it does now? Because I feel like when we talk about those games, there's no storyline a game could ever put in to do what happened to your career justice.
Probably not. There is a crash and burn quality to rising from the ashes, and not that I wouldn't have taken that type of career because I wouldn't have to go through the heartache or what put my family through or victimize the people in my life and stuff like that. But I also don't know if I would have the impact that I'm going to have, over the next 40 or 50 years of my life that I would have before. So it's a fine-edged sword, one that I'm really grateful for, because the answer to that question of yours is that all that meant is that I was a decent football player, or really a great football player, because it would be at the professional level. And in the big scheme of things, that's meaningless. It doesn't matter if you're a good football player or not. It matters if you're a good person. And so that definitely is something that I'm grateful for, that has played out the way it did.
I'm sure you go back to that moment a lot, and you're probably brought back to a lot in just conversations and interviews. Obviously the draft, Peyton Manning versus Ryan Leaf. I think nearly any time there's a position battle, the story comes up. And if you don't know, I'm a big Colts fan. I think a big part of what we see is the parallel between, Manning, who goes on, Hall of Fame career, and to be fair, the only thing you really did was just fail to meet some athletic goals that a team and a fan had for you. But I think what's overlooked a lot in this is when you look at the way you played, we kind of talked about it through the motion capture and things like that. You actually checked a lot of boxes for the Colts. Jim Irsay in particular, kind of loved your style of quarterback play. He had guys, grew up around guys like Jeff George, Jim Harbaugh. They weren't that Peyton Manning mold of, mentally dependent more than athletically talented. And, we learned later on that Hunter S. Thompson, famously wrote this letter, questioned the offensive line against Warren Sapp, and really pushed for you to go to Indy. In hindsight, you don't get the credit now that I think you probably deserve. How plausible do you think it was that you actually could have been the number one pick?
Incredibly plausible. I don't see if we don't tell them that we're not interested in going to Indianapolis. I don't know if that's something that Jim Irsay doesn't make a decision on. There, people tell us that they were split 50-50 in the scouting room, and if it was going to be laid at the feet of Irsay, I'm assuming he would have fell on my side of things. So. We just didn't want to go to Indy. We wanted to go to the West Coast. We wanted to go to the beach. I mean, I had family there. I played on the West Coast in the Pac-10 conference. It just seemed like it was the right fit. I wasn't thinking appropriately around, pieces in place. Marshall Faulk was there. Marvin Harrison was there. Those were pieces that I wasn't looking at. And, so it very reasonably could have been me in Indianapolis if ownership just simply said we're going to do what we want to do, and but luckily for their organization and for the city and for all their fans, Bill Polian had I think the final say in all this, and he knew that Peyton was the right choice.
Infamously, you kind of miss a meeting for whatever reason. Did you ever look back at that meeting and think that could have been maybe the catalyst that kind of pulled everything apart?
No, I think when my agent says Ryan does not want to go to Indianapolis, I think that was the catalyst to me not going to Indianapolis.
Okay. How much were you, I guess, obviously you're looking back, hindsight now, 20 years, grown man, a lot of different experiences. How much of your agent was in control of those things? How much was he guiding you now in the right direction, or how much you think it was just, him trying to appease what, a lot of people thought was going to be a generational talent at quarterback?
Oh, he works for the client, right? So, that's the thing, that they have a lot of information, but ultimately the client is the one that's paying you. So you have to do their bidding. And we had a long conversation around not wanting to go to Indianapolis. So that was the plan. We didn't go out of our way to sabotage it, but we made it very clear to them that, hey, Ryan's not interested. We looked at the pick as 1A and 1B. We didn't see it as the second pick in the draft or the first pick in the draft. That's how we viewed it. And I was more than happy to go to San Diego. Of course, I thought it was going to be a much different kind of career, but who couldn't have asked for more when it came to being around leadership like Junior Seau and Rodney Harrison, and Kevin Gilbride was the head coach at the time. June Jones was the quarterback coach. The beautiful city of San Diego, and family was there. I mean, just everything that I could have wanted. So I don't think he had to pull many strings except tell the organization that, like, hey, Ryan does not want to go to Indianapolis. I mean, he made that very clear from the beginning. And ownership for a team, who are billionaires, they don't need to listen to the lowly agents and players, right? They're the ones in control. They can decide what they want to do. But we made it pretty clear to them that's not where we wanted to be. If they would have drafted me, I would have went and I would have played my tail off. It just, we thought we'd headed off the pass. They could have a very good quarterback in Peyton Manning and still allow me to go to a place like San Diego. I thought that was a win-win when it was all said and done.
It's interesting. We briefly talked, and I mean for 10 seconds before we started to record this. And it's interesting that, when I met through your agent and I talked about, having this interview, there was no transcript. Everything was, hey, you're an open book. And I say that because you're very open with your struggles in terms of addiction, the decision making you just spoke about. Every day, I think even now, you probably have to be mindful that if you have one misstep, there's going to be people that look at what happened and say, hey, that's Ryan Leaf. He's a failure. And that's what's going to happen to him. How do you take your life and work in that direction, knowing that, you're put under a microscope in a way maybe you don't deserve now, maybe it's something you do deserve now, but kind of push that into a positive way?
Well, that's not true. I'm not under a microscope. I fuck up every single day. I do it constantly. I'm a flawed human being, so I'm not under a microscope. I screw up. I'm just like you. I'm just like everybody else. If people have judgment or criticisms of that, that's them just projecting their own stuff. That has nothing to do with me. I'm like I say to people all the time, we are all the same. We are all these flawed human beings. And dude, I screw up every single day. And that's human. That's the human part of me. And so I haven't put myself in a difficult position. I've put myself in a real position like everybody else. And in fact, when I do mess up, I talk about it. And I'm not this Instagram, YouTube world. I don't live in that world where everything's hunky dory and everything's fine. No, it's not. Life's life. Life's hard. It's not fair. It's how you deal with it that matters. And sometimes you don't deal with it in the right way. You wake up the next morning, you make amends for it, you deal with the consequences, and you move forward. Because if that were the case, my answer, people are like, man, you're such a screw up. I thought you were on the right track or something like that. I just go, well, what am I supposed to do? Should I just pack it in? Should I just go kill myself and call it a life? Or should I go, hey, I messed up. I'm going to mess up again, but it still doesn't change who I want to be as a person, as a father, as a peer, and keep moving forward. So I think that microscope look or pressure or whatever you kind of talked about there, that is others' projections on what it seems like, not anything I view it or the prism I view it through.
I think a lot of times when we find out athletes are going through struggles, we learn about it in the wrong way, though. Whether it is jail, abuse. Unfortunately, we lose a lot of players. You've been really vocal about that, and that the NFL needs to do more, should project more, should help more. How do you feel now that you know that all these things are really impacting players as their careers end? And it seems like, at least to a fan, the proper steps of help don't seem to be offered. But when they're playing, Pro Bowl level, exciting, selling ticket football, it seems like everyone wants to help them be the most they can. But when the sport's done with them, essentially the sport seems to be done with them.
It's just the way it is, just the way it goes. Like when they collective bargain with the NFL and the ownership, they don't view themselves as a retired player. They view themselves as a current player trying to maximize all they can in the short period of time that they're going to be playing. So they expect they'll make tens of millions of dollars, and they'll never be a Ryan Leaf, a drug addict, felon, failure, former player. They'll never be a Vincent Jackson, alone in a hotel room at 38 dying. They don't see that version of themselves. And since the former player doesn't have a voice in that collective bargaining room, it's never going to be correctly negotiated for benefits down the line. And if that's not going to be the case, and the NFL has clearly shown us that they don't care about the former player, then it's on us. The onus is on us as former players. There's 27,000 of us ever. To be the difference. We were able to accomplish what 1% of the 1% of the 1% could. We definitely can help save each other's lives, and that's the mantle we're all taking up. We're just not going to allow lives that are so precious just to disappear and continue to disappear.
For a lot of reasons you just discussed, you've got a unique story. You've got once in a lifetime, really, experiences that rival probably no one in terms of an athlete. You have some incredible insight, what pressures a player, what the results of those things can be. You've done probably what must account for years of your life in media. Tell me about the decision to push, your own brand and what someone can expect from your show that actually premieres tomorrow.
Yeah. I worked for ESPN a year ago. COVID interrupted that. I've been home pretty much since they pulled me off the road. It was March 11th at Oklahoma Pro Day. I was covering Jalen Hurts and CeeDee Lamb. And they pulled me off the road after that. And, everybody's been home, and I've been home ever since. And I looked at 2020 and how much like control I felt like it took away. And in 2021, we just kind of came together and said, we're going to control what we can control. We're just going to work our tail off. And, at the end of the year or a year and a half from now or whatever, we'll see where the chips lay. And hopefully we have an audience and everything like that. So we decided to launch, my own show a year ago. Last few years, Rich Eisen's had me hosting his show when he's been out as a guest host, and it's a 3-hour, show where you host it yourself, and it's got the TV component, and really enjoyed it. Did really well, so I felt like that was the next logical step, and my show will be a little different, right? It's going to be, of course, about sports. Yeah, it's a sports talk show, but I'm also the one who's doing it, so it's going to be a little fucked up too, right? And I think that's the best way to put it. It's going to be about life. It's going to be about anything and everything under the sun, really, and helping people, on a human base, on a human level, and understanding that like sports is what brings us all together. Sports is what does that, and when sports does do that and brings us together for an hour each day. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we're able to have the honest and open conversations. And that's what I'm looking forward to.
Can you talk a little bit about your outreach and what you've done? Because I know a lot of it gets made at the time, but I feel like every time you speak to somebody, you specifically should be able to talk about what you do for the community now going out. I've seen some great things on your website about how you're projecting to youth and try to make sure that you inform people of what can happen and lead by example. And I feel like a lot of times that's just not made the case of when people think of Ryan Leaf, they don't think of the ambassador that you are today. Can you talk a little about what made you want to take that stance and how you're continuing to do it now?
Well, as a mentor of mine, I kind of wanted to disappear into, kind of the ether, just be a sober human being and not be in the public eye. But 22 years later, we're still talking about me and Peyton Manning in the draft. And so my name's not going to go anywhere regardless of what I choose to do. So I've kind of, dismantled that power of that and began to tell my story publicly and around the country. And it's not just, there's a lot of success in my story. There is less failure in my story than there are success. And I think people would view that differently just because it was very public. But to come from where I came from, to get where I got to, and then to get back to where I'm at right now, those are incredible successes. And there are ways to help teach that and show that there's solutions to people's problems, and they can do it if they make positive and healthy choices. And so I've gotten the luxury of doing that over the last 4 years, really. This last year, of course, been hampered quite a bit with the COVID-19 pandemic. But I've utilized social media as a great avenue to reach people and interact with them who are still struggling and needed somebody at a time of need. And that's been wonderful. It hasn't been quite the same not being, in the same room with a lot of people, but, we do what we can. We control what we can control right now. And that's been a huge part of 2021 so far.
If somebody listening needed to reach out to you, if somebody listening wanted to go support your show tomorrow, how would they go about doing that?
Well, if you want to watch the show, it's on YouTube TV, YouTube Live. It's the Ryan D Leaf Show. And then any of my social platforms, Twitter, Instagram, Ryan D Leaf. My direct messages are always open for anybody and anything. And I though it is overwhelming, we probably received 10,000 messages since the beginning of this pandemic. And I've tried to answer all of them. I know I'm behind quite a bit, but if you know, they seem pretty important, I get to them as fast as I can. And then you can go to my website, which is theryandleaf.com, and that shows you all the ways that we impact the community, um, um, and things of that nature. So that's the best way. I'm excited for the show. Got a bunch of great guys that have jumped on to produce it, and be a part of it. We've got a couple great sponsors to start out. For a show that when we announced to everybody a week ago, we had 2 subscribers. So that's where we're at, and to have a couple sponsors come on when you don't have anybody really subscribing to your show yet, I think that's a lot of confidence that they're placing on us, and that makes me really excited.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I know I myself, I'll put a link down in the description. You guys can go over and get on board with the YouTube channel. Ryan, if we could go back to 1998, there probably would never be a thought in my mind that one day I would be here sitting talking to you, but I certainly appreciate all the time you give me. I really appreciate all the honesty, sharing your story, but most importantly, what you're doing to help other people learn from what you've experienced in your life. I think that's much more important than anything a football career could have ever provided to you, is what you're doing with your life now. I'll go ahead and leave you to thank any sponsor, promote anything else you need to do, but I did want to let you know I appreciate your time so much tonight.
I appreciate you too. Thanks for reaching out, and thanks to Athletic Brewing and Sunfair. Those are the two companies that have jumped in early and really backed me to be a part of my own show. So looking forward to it. Everybody, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, noon Pacific to 1 o'clock. Come have some fun. I guarantee you'll enjoy your time.